everyone, we have another Bible lesson today. Today we are going to learn about Ruth. Now before we get there, we have to start with Naomi. Naomi was a lady who lived in Israel, and she had a family. She had 2 sons and her husband. Her husband's name was Elimelech. Her sons' names were Mahlon and Kilian. But they had a problem. In Israel, there was a famine, and a lot of the food wasn't growing because there wasn't enough rain. So there wasn't enough food and water for all of the people. So Elimelech said, "Family, we are going to move somewhere where there's better food." So the whole family went on a journey, and they traveled very, very far and went to live in the land of Moab. Now, when they were in the land of Moab, Elimelech died. So Naomi was left alone with her 2 sons. While they were in Moab, Mahlon and Kilian found wives, and their wives' names were Ruth and Orpah. And that made Ruth very happy that her sons had wives, and they had a beautiful family there in Moab. But as they lived there another 10 years, both of Ruth's sons, Mahlon and Kilian, died there in Moab. And now the family was just Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah. And they were all alone, those 3 women in the land of Moab. Well, Naomi learned that back in her homeland in Israel, there was food growing again, and that the land was blessed. Naomi missed her home very much, so she decided to go back to Israel and leave the land of Moab. So she told Ruth and Naomi, she said, "You guys don't need to come all the way to Israel. There's no reason for you to leave Moab. Moab is your home. Stay here with your families. Don't follow me all the way to Israel." But Ruth and Orpah, they said, "No, we love you, Naomi. You're our family. We want to stay with you." They said, "Surely we will return with thee unto thy people." And Naomi said, "No, no, please stay in your home. You can find happiness here in Moab." So Orpah, she kissed Naomi goodbye and said, "I love you very much, but I think you're right. I'll stay here in Moab, and I'll stay with my family." But Ruth stayed with Naomi, and when Naomi saw that Ruth wasn't going to leave, she said, "Please go. Be with Orpah, stay here." And Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God." So when Naomi saw that Ruth wasn't going to leave, they headed off back to Israel together. When they got to Israel, they needed to be able to buy food. So Ruth had to go to work. She went to a nearby field that had corn, and whatever corn was left over on the ground when the men were done collecting, she would pick it up and take it home so they had something to eat. This field was owned by a man named Boaz. Now Boaz saw Ruth working in the field, and he told his men, "Leave lots of corn behind for Ruth. I want to make sure she has enough food." And Ruth knew that Boaz was a very kind man. Something amazing happened. Boaz and Ruth fell in love, and they decided to get married. And Ruth found a husband in Israel, and they were a wonderful, happy family. And Naomi was so excited that Ruth had a husband and that they could be a happy family together. And Boaz took very good care of Ruth and Naomi. Now something very cool happened. Ruth had a baby, and his name was Obed. But you want to know something cool about Obed? He had a son many, many years later whose name was Jesse. And then Jesse had a son, and his name was David. That's right, King David. David and Goliath. Did you know that David's great-great-grandmother was Ruth and Boaz? Because Ruth obeyed God and stayed with Naomi, and she said, I want your God to be my God and your people to be my people. She met Boaz, and they had Obed, and that led to having King David. Isn't that amazing what happens when we follow what God wants? Next week, when we do our Bible story, we're going to have a story about another young lady whose name is Esther. And this is a very important story, how a young girl obeyed God and saved an entire country. Wow, that's amazing. All of her people were in grave danger, but God had a special plan for Esther, and he was going to make her a queen. And as queen, she was going to be able to help save her people. God has a plan for your life, just like he had a plan for Ruth and he had a plan for Esther. God has a plan for you. And he loves you very, very much. Thank you so much for watching this story, and I can't wait to talk to you all next week. Bye!